Welcome to the fifth, and I must add, final session of Behind the Curtain. Our program today features Russell Schultz, Assistant Professor of Theater at Santa Fe College. He earned a BA degree in theater from Coe College and an MFA in theater from the University of Florida. He has been a professional actor and director for over 20 years. As an actor, he has worked with Stage West in Fort Worth and the Water Tower Theater in Dallas. He has also worked locally at the Hippodrome Theater. As a TV actor, Russell has performed in several TV series, most notably Walker, Texas Ranger, and Wishbone. As a director, he helmed Blood Wedding and 10 out of 12 for the University of Florida, and A Chorus Line and War of the Worlds for Santa Fe College. He is active in online education and furthering the development of Santa Fe's first introduction to theater online class. So we're honored to have him with us today to speak about the behind the curtain efforts at the Jackson Sasser Fine Arts Hall at Santa Fe College. Russell, curtains up.
Thank you, John. Welcome, everybody. This is a great opportunity for me to kind of share what we do here at Santa Fe College. When John originally contacted me about this, he had mentioned that Santa Fe is often easy to overlook in terms of arts opportunities here in Gainesville. You have several really well-known theaters here. Obviously, the Hippodrome is probably the most well-known professional theater that we have, and obviously the University of Florida being the most well-known collegiate theater. But we have a great facility here, a brand new in terms of architecture, a brand new fine arts hall that was built only about 10 years ago, and it's now named the Jackson and Sasser Fine Arts Hall after our retired president, Jackson Sasser, who was a big supporter of the arts and was kind of spearheading this effort to get the arts hall funded. And so I'm very pleased to kind of go through our process here with you guys today, or at least my process. We have several directors that do different shows here at Santa Fe. So what I'll be talking about today is just kind of my process and how I go through a show. And I thought I would, instead of focusing on kind of general shows and kind of what we do, I thought I'd focus on one specific one. This was my first show that I directed here at Santa Fe back in 2017, musical A Chorus Line. I'll go through a little bit of the process with you, concept, the research that I do that goes into this production, the designs from sketches to finalization. Then we'll go into the casting of the show, the rehearsals of the show, and finally publicity and photo shoots that we do, and then finally the performance of the show. As we discussed before we actually started today, I do have some video that I'd like to show, but I was worried about copyright infringement and things like that. So I'll kind of take this off screen sharing. I'll find the video and then I'll pull some up at the end if we have time. So if that's something we're all interested in, then I can do that at the end. So so let me go through these slides here a little bit, and we'll first talk about the mission of Santa Fe. Santa Fe is a little bit different perhaps than a lot of the other professional theaters and even some of the more educational theaters that we have here in the area. What I do is when I try to think about what show that I want to do next, the college doesn't really give me any kind of guidelines or input for it. They pretty much leave it up to me. In the case of A Chorus Line, I had mentioned this to my department chair, who is a trained ballet dancer herself and knows all about the dance world and spent years and years in the professional world. And I just kind of threw this out as maybe something that I would kind of like to do. And that was over the summer, back in 2016, actually. And before I know it, she had already called the publishing company and secured the rights. So at that point, I guess I was doing Chorus Line. It really wasn't a conscious decision that I made. It was more of an idea, but she really liked the idea, and that's the direction that we ended up going in. When I select a play or a musical, I try to think about what skills the students are going to be learning. To me, it's about the skills that are transferable, meaning what is an actor going to want to know that they can then take to a different university or into the professional world. So when the chorus line was announced as the show, I had dancers in the dance program lined up outside my door here, asking me or telling me that they wanted to audition, but they were nervous about the singing because they had never sung before. And then I had likewise singers that were lining up outside my door saying, I'm so nervous about the dancing in this because I've never done it before. And nobody had acted. Really, they had been on stage as dancers or singers, but never really had to act in any way. So I assured them that our job here at Santa Fe is to teach them how to do the things that they are deficient in. So if a singer has never danced before, our job is to turn them into dancers. And if a dancer has never sung, to turn them into singers, at least well enough to sing in the show, and to teach them the fundamentals of dance and the fundamentals of voice, and all of them the fundamentals of acting. So that when a really good dancer gets to New York or gets to Chicago or gets to LA or gets to Dallas, wherever they're going, they at least have the fundamentals that they need in order to get cast, because a casting director or a director of a show is not going to have time to teach them how to do this stuff. They need to have the fundamentals. And if you are a really good dancer, but not so great on the singing, they can teach you the songs that they need to teach you, or they can teach you likewise the choreography of a show, but they do not have time to teach you how to sing or how to dance. And so in conjunction with the show, the musical that we're doing, what we do is we ask that all of our students enroll in a dance class and a voice class so that they learn the fundamentals. It's likewise also great because they are limbering, they're warming up all the time. They're singing all the time. Their voices are never tired. Their bodies are never going to get injured because they are dancing all the time. And so this is something that we mandate of everybody that's cast in a show, is that they all take a singing class and they all take a dance class. And that way we keep them kind of up on the stuff and how to stretch, how to do it properly. So we're teaching them the fundamentals of dance. So once we have the play selected, and in this case it was a chorus line, we actually then will start into the research process. And so this is what I do. I sit down with the script and I write a very detailed director's concept that is designed to be distributed to my designers. So in this particular case, I have the director's concept up here. This is just part of it. And this is kind of what I do. I talk about the set first, and I go through the script and I pull out some of the facts of the script. And so this takes quite simply in a New York Broadway theater, 1975, the stage is completely bare, etc. And then this is what I wrote. Zach and Larry share a stool that lives downstage right. There are some flying mirrors that come in during Cassie's number, Music in the Mirror. This is a deceptively simple description, but that is really all there is in the script. To me, the biggest challenge is to create a unified space. I don't want the stage itself to feel like one space and the house to feel like another, since one of the characters, Zach, is spending almost all of his time in the house. And so I kind of highlight things that I think are going to be issues, or kind of the way that I want the mood of the play to be. I also stipulated of exposed brick, holes where I-beams would be placed, perhaps some old sliding barn doors. I also noted that the back of our own fine arts hall is way too pretty and modern. It's made out of cinder block. And I've seen that wall lit before professionally for certain shows. And I've always thought that it just looks too modern. In New York theaters that were built in the 20s and 30s never had cinder block. They were always regular red brick. And so that's kind of the look that I was going for. So this is a very simple kind of sketch that I draw up and I write for all of my designers. And then after this is done, I distribute it to all of my designers. And I also note each musical number has its own feel too. So I Hope I Get It is the very first opening number. And this is my little note there. We need to figure out where the inner monologue lighting is and how it differs from the quote unquote real world lighting, because it goes back and forth several times in that opening number. And then the next number is I Can Do That. And then we've got At the Ballet. And this one I wanted to feel like a music box. It's three women singing about their experiences growing up as little girls in dance studios, much of their young life, and how they initially fell in love with dance as an art form. So I wanted this to feel kind of like magical, fantasy, beautiful, home, happy. These are just some words that came to my mind when I was listening to that song and reading the script. And I think we're going to use some dancers here upstage right, or wherever we decide to place them. This is where we may also want to fly something in. And what we decided to fly in, I'll show you a little bit later, is an actual chandelier that kind of, I think, would be in a big dance studio. And we changed that space completely during that number. Also, the next one after that is sing. So after we get that magical kind of ballet, they kind of counter that with this nice little purely vaudeville performances, which is very reminiscent to me of Burns and Allen. And it's straight out of the American theater tradition, this classic kind of vaudeville tradition that we have here in America. And so that was a duet between a husband and a wife where the wife can't sing. And she's talking about her frustrations of getting cast in shows because she's not a singer. She's only really a dancer, a very good one at that, but only a dancer. And so I go through each song in the script and I kind of make a little note about how I want those numbers to feel, any problems I think we're going to have. Just these are all very just initial ideas that I have. And once this all happens, then it goes to kind of lighting notes and things like that. And then we go into images. I always like to give my designers images to play for them. Artists and designers, directors, actors, we're very visual people. I can sit there and write. That director's concept was probably 10 pages when I got it all finished. But the thing that designers really look for, really kind of grab onto, is the images that I'm looking at. So this is an image that I came up with for At the Ballet. It's just an image that I found on Google. It's nothing in and of itself unique, but I love this idea of this kind of purpley, kind of bluish kind of lighting. The dancers in this protected space where it reflects the mood of the song, reflects the lyrics of the song, which is this magical time in your life, in a young artist's life, where time doesn't matter, responsibilities don't matter. You're just simply enjoying the process. You love that process of creating, and you're no longer, or not burdened right now with the business of acting. You're not worried about, gosh, I hope I get another job, or I've got to pay my rent next month and I have 29 cents in my bank account. I mean, all artists that have worked professionally have been there. And it is a very scary place to be, and it's incredibly frustrating. And then you think at some point, why am I even doing this? Like, what is the point of all this? And then you remember back to those times where you were a young artist in an acting class or in a ballet class, a dance class, or playing music just for fun in your garage somewhere. And you think about how free that was and how great that protective environment was, where everybody was supportive and everybody kind of loved what they were doing just for the sake of doing it. And so this is one of the images that I came up with for At the Ballet. This is another image of an exposed brick wall that I kind of had for the background of the theater. And so this is very different than the way that our Fine Arts Hall stage back wall looks. This is all exposed brick. You can even see those little squares there are actually spaces for I-beams. So you can actually slide an I-beam in there and then fly things in and out, support scenery. Sometimes you can support flats and things with those I-beams. It's a very old school way of doing things, but a lot of theaters, even theaters that I've worked in that were built not too long ago, have these kinds of multiple configurations that you can do. And so these I-beams are there, and you can even see at the top there might be some kind of exposed conduit for lighting and things like that. I also really liked that idea of using this, all of the elements of the theater, these ballet bars that are just kind of strapped onto the back of the walls, and lighting and things like that. We can kind of scrape the walls with some texture and things like that. I think my lighting designer, Liz, came up with that. I was looking more at the texture of the brick, and she was more thinking about the lighting elements and how that creates the texture on the back wall, so it doesn't look so flat, right? So the next thing that I do is I start into character work, and this is a very long and intensive, but incredibly satisfying to a research geek like me. I love this process. This is probably why I ended up going more in the world of directing, less so in the world of acting, although I still act professionally when I can. But this is a process that I've been doing since I was a very, very young actor. And what I do here, as you can see on the left here, is I'm pulling facts. just from the script. So I've got the character's name up there. In this particular case, it's Cassie, and Cassie does not have a number. Each dancer in the show is assigned a number by the director, Zach, except Cassie. Cassie has no number. And so if they had a number there, I would put their number associated with that dancer next to her name. And what I do here is I'm only presenting facts that are in evidence of the script. And so what is a fact? Well, a fact is what the character says about themselves, what other characters say about that character, or what the author has said about that character. And I'm taking these lines verbatim directly from the script. And so the first fact is Cassie steps out and stands next to Sheila. That's on page 11. I always write the page number so that in case I'm wondering, now, where did I read that or where did I see that? I can instantly just go to my fact list and I can go back to the script and know instantly where I got that information from. So you can see every single fact about Cassie has been pulled out of the script. Can I talk to you for a minute? Well, I mean, privately, she starts towards the steps in the aisle. You cannot go to the movies until you finish your homework. These are all things that she's said about herself or that other people have said about her in the script. Again, very long and intense, laborious process. I go through the same process with every single character in the script until I get to the end. And that's when I start looking back at all of these facts. Now I've taken this character out of the play and I can analyze this character in just kind of with their own words, kind of in an isolation. It's kind of like taking something under a microscope and just looking at this character. Eventually, after I've analyzed all of these facts, I get to a core personality. In this case, I've decided that she is she's unfulfilled in her life. She's a self-fulfiller. She does things primarily for the sheer act of creation of the process. She's a process person, not a product person. And how did I come to that conclusion? Well, I read all of these things in the script and I got the sense that this is where she wants to be. And so about a little over halfway down on this, I write, the facts seem to support the conclusion that Cassie is too good for this chorus. But the major consideration here is that a chorus of dancers is still more fulfilling than a life of pseudo-stardom in Los Angeles, where she was as a dancing Band-Aid. Through her work with Zach, Cassie felt artistically alive. She and Zach had nothing to lose and everything to prove. The freedom they must have felt in those days would have been exhilarating when it was just the two of them in a room creating. Cassie is an artist. She lives for the process, the opportunity to be part of something potentially great right from the very beginning. This is why I believe she is so eager to start again. She can't be fulfilled waiting tables or teaching other people how to do what she should be doing herself. And again, this is a little bit of mixture of my own narrative coupled with the facts of the script. In other words, my narrative here is a desire to explain the facts in the script. In my old life, I used to be a security consultant. I had another job completely before I came here to Santa Fe, before I started grad school, working in New York City in museums primarily. And I protected cultural property. And I went to school up there. I had a master's degree in protection management, which is kind of like an MBA for security guys. And I used to work with a lot of retired NYPD and a lot of retired Secret Service agents and things. And one thing that always stuck out to me that they told me right from the very start was behavior indicates personality. If you can find out how they behave, then it will lead you to their personality. And so that's kind of the approach that I use now, is trying to find sandboxes in which an actor can create by creating personalities. In other words, this is the frame around which their behavior is explained. And so again, I do this for every single character in the play. I write these little narratives, and then I give these to the actors as kind of a way of setting the framework that they can then begin to create in. There on the bottom, you see a still from our final production. That's Zach and Cassie talking to each other in the final production of the play. So as I am researching and doing all of this stuff, Scott, our set designer, and our lighting designer are busy working up sketches of how they think the scenes are going to lay out and what they're going to kind of look like. And so you can see here, this is a very early sketch that Scott sent me about what he conceived of as the beginning of the musical. And in his mind, there was an empty black stage. The floor would be black marley with a white line. There's a ghost light sitting in the middle of the empty space. And this actually became our concept sort of for the opening of the play as the audience was filing in. Scott originally had the curtain drawn, and I didn't like that. I wanted the stage to be open completely because we're exposing the actors, the dancers' lives here on stage. I didn't want anything hidden. I didn't want to have a curtain and then the curtain open to signal the beginning of the show. I wanted the audience to walk in and instantly feel like they were coming in to a theater that had been left dark overnight, and they were going to see the beginning of this rehearsal, from the dancers warming up to the dance captain removing that ghost light. A ghost light, for those of you guys who don't know, is one single illumination that is placed on stage, usually on casters, on rollers. And they light it, they just light this little light bulb up before they leave at night. And the reason is, number one, for safety, in case people need to come in at night. There's always a light on stage so you don't trip on things. But in the traditional superstitious nature of actors, we always think that there are ghosts in the building. And so the light is a way to kind of keep the ghosts at bay. It's an old stage superstition that is still adhered to this day. So that would be kind of what you would see if you were coming in early in the morning for an audition as a dance captain or as a director. You would see the ghost light on stage. And so as the pre-show announcement was playing about turn off your cell phones, don't take any flash photography, that kind of stuff, the actors who played the dance captain came in and then rolled that light off stage, and then very slowly the dancers started filing in, and then the lights came up for the opening number. And so that's kind of how we did it. This is another early design for the number at the ballet. We wanted kind of a curtain to fly in with the chandelier. Again, if you remember back to that dancer that I had in that kind of egg, kind of that Fabergé egg kind of feeling of that protected environment. This is what an early design was for that. I'll show you the final concept and also the way it looked at the end. But anyway, Scott is writing notes in here about perhaps the psych would be better, or some kind of black upstage traveler psych would be better. We actually did using a psych, and what you see on the screen right now is pretty much the way the final version of that scene looked. It was absolutely beautiful. I've never seen a production. I've done Chorus Line, and I've seen many productions of Chorus Line, but I've never seen that number done with curtains flying in and chandeliers flying in and having the cast actually on stage but disappear. And I'll show you how we did that here in a minute. But again, this is Scott's early designs. And these get then negotiated between Scott and I in terms of what the final stage piece is going to look like. I always encourage my designers to challenge me. I don't want them to just kind of accept what I give them blindly. I want them to tell me, force me to explain every decision that I'm making. Why are you putting this in here? Or why is this on stage? I like minimalism. I work with designers that put everything in the kitchen sink on stage, or they want to anyway. Obviously, budget is going to be a concern there, but I like minimalism. I like letting the audience use their imagination to kind of fill in the blanks in between the spaces. And so I love things that are suggestive, but not representational. And that's kind of what we go for. This is a semi-final rendering of what the backstage of the theater was going to look like. You can see there's some exposed heating pipes up top there. There is a makeshift ballet bar with some clothes, maybe some old leotards or something draped over that. There is a door there that's a fake door. The door didn't work. It was just kind of for looks. But we had a little bit of fun with this. The sign actually says no exit. And then we decided to hang an illuminated sign above that door that said exit. It was a big joke between all of us. I loved that fact that we could have an exit, no exit sign. There is a play, and actually an existentialist play called No Exit. It's about three people that are trapped in hell with each other, and they're each other's nemesis for eternity. And as we were kind of working on this play, we felt there were some existential elements of A Chorus Line. And so we thought this would be the audition from hell. Like, if you were a dancer and had to go into this audition and deal with a director like this, who were asking you very personal questions about your life. And it wasn't really even necessarily about the steps or the dance, but it was more like about you, like a regular corporate job interview. You would be terrified as an artist. You don't want to talk about yourself. You pride yourself on being able to conform to whatever the director wants. And so we had a little bit of fun with this kind of inside joke that this was literally the audition from hell. All of these people are kind of trapped in hell with each other until the end of the audition. And so that was kind of our little nod to existentialism there. But you can see this is kind of what the final version is going to look like. Here's another shot of the same thing, but with the mirrors flown in. most productions of Chorus Line have these mirrors that rotate. So the mirrors are always on stage, but then they just kind of rotate for each individual number. So sometimes the mirrors are there for the dance parts, and when the actors are just speaking or doing monologues or doing individual solo numbers, they turn. And we didn't want to do that. We wanted to have these mirrors not only fly in and out, kind of imperceptibly. So again, we transformed the space kind of magically, but we also wanted to have them cantilever for Cassie's big solo in the middle of the musical. And we did that as well. We flew these mirrors in and then they angled. And so it really did create a studio feel for Cassie for her big solo, which goes on for like, I think it's a 6-minute dance solo or something, where she's got a belt and she's got to dance. It's really quite an amazing number. If you've seen Chorus Line, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So those mirrors formed this little protective bubble around her that reminded her of the pure joy of creation during that particular number. So the next thing we do is we get into casting, and this is not a long process for me. I usually do it over Thanksgiving week. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we have to cast the show. I do that kind of on purpose because I don't want this process to drag out. I know myself and I know my process. I will go back and forth on casting decisions. So if I give myself a deadline of Wednesday before we leave so that everybody knows what part they're going to play before we go on Thanksgiving break, it just kind of settles my mind a little bit. We call them in, we have them do one cold read from the script, and then we have them do a song. And this is the moment of truth. This is where the dancers, are terrified to come in, and the singers are terrified to do the dance call. So it's a little bit of a scary process, but they all get through it, and we reassure them that we will teach you how to do this. We just kind of want to see where you are right now. Fortunately, in this, we got really lucky with this cast. I really honestly could not have hoped for a better cast. It really was quite remarkable to actually hear people that had never sung before sing these songs beautifully. The girl who played Cassie in this show was a trained dancer from the time she was a little girl and had never sung on stage before. And oh my gosh, when she opened her mouth to sing, I had no idea that she could sing. I thought she was just a dancer, but man, she had a voice, and she had no formal training in singing at all. But when she opened her mouth, I knew that I had found my Cassie. There were 2 roles that we didn't cast right away. I just couldn't find anybody. And that was Val and Bobby, but we eventually got them cast. And again, just got super lucky with the people that we cast. They didn't audition originally because they thought they couldn't dance. Tremendous singers, just didn't think that they could dance, but we convinced them finally. So we have callbacks and we cast the show before Thanksgiving, and then everybody goes away. And then when we come back in January, we start the rehearsal process. Usually we give the students about 3 weeks to come back from break and to get acclimated to new schedules. We usually rehearse Monday through Thursday. And we try to go from 4 in the afternoon until about 8. I don't like to keep my actors past 8. They are still students. They still have work to do. They still have lives. I remember going to UF when I was a grad student over there. We would rehearse from 7 until 11. And I would then get home and then have to start my papers and my research and grade things. I was always up until 2 or 3 in the morning. And me personally, my best work never got done past about 8 o'clock in the evening. So you had 1 good hour out of me, and then I was just kind of taking notes and rehearsing it on my own. With our actors, I want to give them enough time to get the rest of their work done. Some of them are working part-time jobs too. So it's always a case of scheduling. And of course, I have to do all of the scheduling and working around dance conferences, working around other professors' schedules, working around other choir rehearsals that these students might be involved in. It is a very time-consuming process, but fortunately, as a former project manager, I manage my time very well. Then as we're doing the rehearsals, I'm also involved in poster design and publicity photos. The process for designing the program or the posters is very much the same way as it is for designing the show itself. I have kind of images in mind that I give to a graphic designer over here, and then I let them go to work. And fortunately, we have a great graphic design team over here. This is the final poster design that we had. I wanted it to be a little Art Deco-y and a little bit kind of in that vein. I loved the gold, obviously. And then our graphic designer, Tabrisha, added these little almost like champagne bubbles that kind of come up at the top there. And I just love, I don't know if they're champagne bubbles or stars, maybe, that all dancers want to be stars when they first start this process. I think there was a little bit of both going on here, but I just love the design of this poster. All of my posters, I try to conceive as works of art in and of themselves. And so very selfishly, I frame them after the show is done, have everybody, the cast and all the designers sign the back of the posters. And then I have two of them. One goes in my house and one goes in the Fine Arts Hall, back near where the bathrooms are and where the water fountains are. And so that way, when our students come back to visit, they can always go and look at their old posters and know that their signatures are behind those posters. It just kind of gives them a little bit of agency and tradition in the theater, so that they feel like they own it, like they feel like they've done something special that is going to live in that theater for, you know, the next 30 years. And I really like being able to go back to UF and seeing posters of shows that I was in. And so this is kind of something that I stole from UF, but I always like them to be kind of works of art in and of themselves. So while all the rehearsals are happening, the music director is also talking to me and coming into rehearsals and taking notes with the score. And we don't get the orchestra. We try to always use a live orchestra in our shows. I love that aspect of Santa Fe. We do pay our musicians. They come in about a week before we open, which may seem a little bit late, but because of budget constraints, we don't have time to bring them in for the entire duration of the rehearsals. And so we bring them in at the end. The advantage of having professional musicians is they don't need time to rehearse. They know the music, they pick it up, they just do it. And fortunately, we had an awesome music director for this particular performance, and Andrew was amazing. He came in, he knew exactly what he wanted. He knew the show very well because he'd been in rehearsals all semester, and he was great. And so he was able to come in, the musicians sat down, and we pretty much were going gangbusters right from the very start. In fact, so much so that if something would mess up or if something would get off on timing or whatever, he got very irate with professional musicians that he thought should know better. But in the end, they were all friends, and so they would push each other to do better. And I really, really appreciated that aspect of Andrew's approach to this. I just think that it's amazing to have somebody that was that good. Andrew's moved on now; he's not here anymore. But I've got a new music director who I know will be equally as good. I haven't worked with David quite as much yet. We did another musical, Grand Hotel, a couple of years ago, and David was involved in that. But David is going to now be our new musical director, as our previous one retired. So I'm really eager to work with him in the coming months. So we then get into performance. Now we're into the run of the show, and this officially ends my involvement. Once opening night comes, I turn the show over to the stage manager, as they do in professional theaters, and I'm no longer involved in that process anymore. I do come about midway through the runs, and I come closing night, but I do want to give my actors freedom. I don't want them to think like, oh, the director's in the audience every single night. They need to find these characters, and they need to have the freedom to be able to go to extremes, to find the boundaries, as it were, in these sandboxes that they've created. And so I don't like to breathe down their necks. I like to give them some freedom to know that they can have fun with the show, that the stage manager's got it, as it would be in a professional setting. But sometimes I just can't help myself. I love the show so much. I just want to come every night. I do refrain from doing that, but I usually try to hit at least 3 shows in the run. And so this is the final sketch of what the show looks like from the house. We had a little bit of an issue with those false proscenium that you see there, those kind of orangish, goldish frames around the stage. That was the original intention. I remember something happened with it. We ended up not using that. And so that's what the sketch was. And this is kind of what it finally looked like in our show. With the background, you see the no exit sign back there, the exposed conduit, the lights that kind of scrape, what looks like black little monoliths back there from 2001, A Space Odyssey, are actually the mirrors flying out. So we fly them in, and then they kind of flew out as the show progressed. And so you can see the final dancers there that finished the show on the line, as it were, with their headshots. This is the way the show looked as the audience was coming in. So again, you can see all the exit sign, the exposed brick, the conduit, some ropes that are there hanging off the ballet bar. And that's kind of what, and then of course the lights that are through the grid kind of scraping the wall there. That was another element that our lighting designer added that I really love. And you can see the ghost light being removed as the pre-show announcement was playing. And then there's our music director, Andrew, in the pit. he would sit down for a lot of the numbers, but I kind of like seeing the conductor. I think they are part of the show. The orchestra is part of the show, so I really don't mind seeing them as part of the show. And I try to get them on stage as much as I can too. Sometimes when we do other musicals. This is the number that I referenced before at the ballet. You can see there's the curtain with the kind of bluish purplish color that the set designer and the lighting designer decided to go with. There's the chandelier flying in. This is kind of the big moment, the belts toward the end of that song. And then we've got these ballet dancers that are kind of reenacting the dances that the dancers would have been doing when they were little girls, singing about this. The black back there is actually not black. That's a scrim that was flowing in. We lit it from the back so that from the front, so you can kind of see the cast of the rest of the cast members are actually behind that black scrim, but you can't see them. They totally disappear behind that thing. And as the dancers kind of come in and they're singing, it totally transforms that space. And then at the end of this, the curtain flew out, the chandelier flies out, the dancers disappear, the three singers on the end there, on the left side of your slide, they kind of merge back into the line as you see the exposed brick. The dancers kind of step forward, and then we're back in the theater space again. And so it was a quick change. It only was on stage like this for maybe a minute or maybe a minute and a half. And then all of that stuff went away and you were back to the original scene from the theater. This is Bows. This is at the very end of the show. The final number, which some people call one. One is actually a number in the show that they do previously. This last number, not to confuse it with the part that we do in the middle or towards the end of the show, one is called Bows. But I think most of you guys will know this song if you hear it. And that's kind of where we ended the show. This is the final, Scott's final rendering for what that number was going to look like. And this is actually what it ended up looking like at the end of the show. This was the only part of the show that we felt we could modernize. There are so many references to actors and dancers from the 50s and 60s, even the 40s, that you can't update the show into a modern era without dealing with these references to that people were making in the 70s to the idols that they grew up with. And so the rest of the show took place, period, in the 70s. And then we thought at the end, let's kind of blow this out. Let's have a little bit of fun with this. Let's not do the typical Art Deco thing that they do at the end of the play where they kind of rotate those mirrors. And then there's this kind of stationary kind of Art Deco thing. We have LED lights that can shoot and pulse and change color and chase each other and do a whole bunch of stuff. And so that's what you actually see on stage are LED lights that are kind of recessed into these crevices in the flats back there. And then we had concert lighting with movers, and we even discussed lasers at one point. The whole end of this show felt like a concert. It felt like a rock concert, and that's kind of what I wanted it to feel like. And so this is our only chance to kind of modernize the show. So that's it, guys. That's what I have. I'll stop my screen sharing. I'll go back to me now. I think I've got a few minutes left as you guys are answering questions. If I can answer anything for you about the process, I will say that the best thing that I'm sorry, I just saw the chat now. I was sharing my screen, and an I-beam is it's a beam like this. It's made out of steel that's designed to support a lot of heavy weight. You see them in buildings where the grids that go above your buildings and stuff are designed to support really heavy weight, and plenum ceilings, which are kind of your drop ceilings here. They support all that grid and all that weight. You can also run wire above them from my previous world. I will conclude by saying this. The greatest compliments that I get as a director at Santa Fe are not the ones about the show necessarily. They're not about they love the show. I'm okay with those, and I love those compliments. But the two greatest compliments that I've ever received were from parents who, when their daughters or their sons, you see them on stage and you know these people so well, and when they come up and say, I had no idea that was my daughter or my son on stage. I completely forgot that that's who they were. Cassie, the girl who played Cassie, her mom came up to me and said, I had no idea she could sing that well. They had never heard her sing. And I thought she was a singer when I first saw her. And also the girl who played Rachel Taylor, who was in the show, she played I can't remember which role she played now, but her mom came up to me and said, this is a trained ballerina who had never uttered a word on stage. And to see her act and to see her do that solo, that sing, or the solo where she's talking about this one part in the play was thrilling. They just could not believe that that was their trained ballerina up there. So I like the fact that we take these people that people know very well and transform them into real all around triple threats when they graduate from Santa Fe. And that's really what we're hoping to do, is to at least introduce them to their possibilities and to show them that we see what they can be even before they do. Like, they don't believe it at first. They're like, there's no way I'll ever be a dancer or ever be a singer. And by gosh, by the end of this process, they want more. Like, those high kicks that are all these high kicks at the end of the show. I mean, after they've been doing this for months, they're exhausted by the end of that show. I mean, they're dancing and singing the whole show. Then they get to the end of the show and it's all high kicks at the end for a minute. And when we first started those high kicks, they were like, oh my gosh, they're so exhausted, they can't go on. By the end of the run, they wanted those kicks to go on forever. They just did not want to lose that show. And for me, that's the best compliments. That's the reward that I get for literally, it takes me a year to plot these things out. What you see on stage is about 2 hours, an hour and a half. Actually, it reflects more of a year of my life. When I finished Chorus Line, I took 2 weeks off because we were now into the summer. I took 2 weeks off. I think I might have gone on vacation. I remember vacations. I haven't had one in a really long time because I work pretty much all year round. And then I started on the next one, which was Grand Hotel. So it usually takes me a long time to conceive and to really spend the time with these shows. But that's the biggest compliments that I get. So I think I am at time. So if you guys have questions, I'll be happy to answer anything I can for you.
Yeah, so please feel free to, again, use the raise hand function or send it in the chat. And I see that John's chat.
I always like to start off the questions as a facilitator. Russ, I've seen a lot of shows. I did see Chorus Line and we enjoyed it immensely. But what does a director have to contend with, and how does it affect your attitudes of the actors on stage when you have, in the absence of a live orchestra or even a combo tour or full orchestra, having pre-recorded music that you run into plays where they just can't, the budget doesn't permit that, so they use a pre-recorded background music. How do you deal with that, and what's the pros and cons of that?
Well, in fact, before we got canceled from COVID, we had planned on doing a musical. The next one we were going to do was Into the Woods by Stephen Sondheim. The play had been cast. We were in rehearsals. It wasn't my show. It was my colleague's show. But once we started, and we had been in rehearsals for about a month already, when spring break happened, we came back for a week at Santa Fe, and then everybody got sent home, and we had to cancel the show. That show was going to have pre-recorded music in it. And the reason that we were going to do that was primarily a rehearsal reason, because we did not feel that we had enough time to rehearse that score, which is incredibly difficult, even with a professional orchestra. We just didn't feel like we were going to have the time. So that was going to be pre-recorded music. I have used pre-recorded music before. I like it as a rehearsal tool. Obviously, if you have a rehearsal score that very closely mimics what you're going to have as a final orchestration for your show, it's great. Actors get used to it. I get used to it. You don't have to deal with the orchestra coming in a week before to kind of work out the problems and the glitches. You just kind of slide right into that final orchestration, which is great. So that's the pros. The cons are that equipment can malfunction. If an actor gets off, even by a half a measure, then you're pretty much stuck. You're relying on that actor to find the beat and to get back on it. There's no vamping, as it were. And so you're not really, I don't particularly feel like pre-recorded music is part of the show. I feel like it's kind of laid on top of the show. Whereas if you have a conductor who's on it, who can recognize, oh, they're not where they need to be, who knows the show as well as the actors do, they can help the actor get back on beat, even to the point of starting over, but they're involved in the show. The music becomes part of the show in terms of problems, issues. I mean, these are things that happen in shows, and they're part of the live experience, a unique, handcrafted experience made just for that audience on that particular day. So I will use it if it's cost prohibitive. We will find ways of working around it, but there are some very severe and quite honestly frustrating things that happen with pre-recorded music. I would just rather not do it because I'm a purist. I like having the orchestra as part of the show, and I like the live experience of theater rather than having something layered on top of it, which a pre-recorded track can do.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Again, feel free to send them in the chat. As of right now, it looks like potentially not, or people are still thinking of the questions. If you do want to do, if you would like to take some time to do the videos, again, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, of course. But it seems like we might have the time if you wanted to show one or two videos, and I will pause the recordings. That way there's no issue with.
Let me see if I can pull one up.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to ask me questions while I'm doing this, guys. I'm going to be kind of doing double duty here, but I can certainly do that. Okay, here's I can probably share this with you guys. And I think I've got, if I'm not mistaken, I think I have our finale in here somewhere too. Give me just 1 second. You can kind of see the. I will share screen with all of you here. By the way, that was our finale. It was kind of a way of updating a chorus line a little bit. I mean, that's when we first started this whole process, there was this idea of do we update it? Do we set it in 2017 or with modern dance clothes and everything? And it just didn't feel right to do that. It just felt like we'd have to explain the references somehow in the play and why they were referring to dancers from the 40s and 50s and 60s and not updating those things. And you can't update chorus line. I like the 70s. I mean, I like that era. I like the fact that chorus line it feels like a 70s musical. And yet, if it's going to be updated at all, at the end is a nice way to tie it together to show the audience that chorus line is not just a show about dancers in the 70s. This is a show about anybody who's ever had aspirations of being a professional artist, period. Dancers, actors, singers, it's all of us. There are people in the audience who had done this musical years ago and were just all smiles at the end of it. Just like, gosh, I wish I could do that musical again. Or this always reminds me of what it was like to be a young artist. It was just, it's a show that unites a lot of different people from a lot of different eras who I did this show when I was in college. I mean, that was back in the 90s. I mean, it was a 20-year-old show by then. But I remember the parts that I played and I remember everything about that experience. So it's a nice way to unite past and present and hopefully hand it off to somebody in the future.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Russell, very much. A great, interesting, and entertaining look at your step-by-step plan for directing a musical theater show.
Yeah, certainly.
So this concludes our class series. I want to thank all of you for tuning in and following our class presentations for the past 5 weeks and supporting ILR. So goodbye, farewell, and have a great day.